It kind of made me salty last Sunday. I told her yesterday, I said, you never brought me tissues. Well, if you've got your Bibles, let's go to Ruth. Ruth chapter 1. I've got some notes because I just want to target some things this morning, but we'll just see where the Lord takes us, but I know where I want to start. So this morning we're talking about turning seasons. We're going to start, I guess, what I'm considering right now a 4-part series, but we'll just see what God's got for that. And this morning the title is The Plan. Look at your neighbor and tell them the plan. Starting at verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, not when the kings ruled, but when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech. The name of his wife was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion of Bethlehem. And they went to the country of Moab and remained there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. Now they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died. So the woman survived her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people by giving them bread. You know, we're in the midst of some season changes. We're moving from summer into fall. Thank you, Jesus. And one of the signs that we're experiencing is that the mornings and the evenings are beginning to cool down. Another sign is that the leaves are beginning to change their colors. Ever so slightly, but if you will look. If there was one word that I would use to identify this movement of seasons, it would be this. It would be change. Everything changes with every season. And as it is in nature, there is also in the spiritual and life seasons. There are changes. God is constantly moving us in and out of seasons in our life. And if we could ever set back for a moment and begin to focus on the changes that we are experiencing, both in our life and in our spiritual, we too would see these subtle changes that would give way to us and help us identify a new season is on its way. Have you ever thought about that? See, some of you right now are experiencing change. Even as we speak right now, you're experiencing change in your life. Could it possibly be that God right now is beginning to allow you to identify a new season? God is wanting to take you from this season to that season. Could it be? I wonder how many of us are paying attention in our own lives at this very moment. over the next few weeks, if God's willing and I'm able, we're going to talk about some of these seasons that we recognize in Ruth. And what I'm talking about on these seasons, I told you earlier before service, we're going to talk about the plan, or the plan, right? We're going to talk about the pursuit. We're going to talk about the promise. And we're going to talk about the possession. So if you'll give me just a few minutes, let's just take a peek. Let's see if we can't glean these 6 verses. This is probably one of my best, not my best, it's probably one of my favorite ways of preaching. And that's to go through it and extract things out in a way that is exegetical. I just want to go piece by piece, word by word, look by look. And I just want to try to tear this thing open so that you and I can find some other truths that as we read, we don't just read over. You with me? First, let's talk about Elimelech. Elimelech made a decision to leave Bethlehem, Judah. And we see that he left Bethlehem, Judah, not just because he wanted to. He was experiencing a change in the season he was in. There was a famine. Well, number one, I already had a problem with it, and I already had to start scratching my head this morning. And I think I scratched off the last 3 hairs that I had. But I started to look at this, and I went, wait a minute. How is it that he can be a part? He was a man of Bethlehem, Judah. That's where he's from. So obviously he understood and knew what Bethlehem meant. The house of bread. How can you have a famine where you are being fed? How can you have a famine setting in the season in which God has planted you in? How can that possibly be? I mean, just like you and I. I mean, we can be setting in a place and begin to experience a famine, and we think that change is the indicator for us to leave this season and run to the next. Okay, y'all not catching up on the seasons. Maybe you're taking this change as an indicator to move from here to there, wherever there is. All right, you're not getting that. Maybe it's an indicator that this woman ain't cut out for me, that I need to find another one. I'm not talking about the married women, married husbands. I ain't talking about none of that. I'm talking about those that are dating and courting. Have you ever run up on one that you said, They do things that make you say, I ain't been saved all my life. I know a little bit of some other stuff. But this will happen to us. If we aren't careful, we will find an experience in our life that will cause us to uproot, if you will, and run to another place. I know y'all have never done that, but I've done that several times in my life. I've taken circumstances. Secondly, he leaves Bethlehem, Judah. The Bible says to go and dwell in Moab. The Hebrew behind dwell is a temporary boy, oh boy. I know that the intent was there. I mean, the intent was there. He didn't want to go and stay. He was just doing what I think that any other man, husband, and father would do for their family. And if they were experiencing a famine, he would probably uproot for just a season, just momentarily. Let's go from here to there so that we can survive the storm and we'll come back. So he's not looking to go there and stay. He is from Bethlehem, Judah. I mean, he doesn't want to become a Moabite. So he goes there to dwell, and while they're there dwelling, he passes. Well, I mean, I don't know about you. I think I've already just went like this on my notes. I took a dive, so I'm just going to go. You and I, we have this tendency that when something, if you feel that God has pulled you, right, and you're there, and you experience adversity, you go, well, maybe God's not. Right? Yeah. Well, here it is. Now she's followed Elimelech and let him bring her to this place of Moab. He has now passed away. But instead of her leaving, she decides, because her sons get married, she decides now she's staying. The Bible said they were there for 10 years. I don't know about you and your calendars, but temporary isn't 10 years. If that's the case, we'll just tell our wives this evening we're going on a temporary bike ride. See, now that word's not temporary, right? So here she is, she's allowing now to accept other circumstances to help offset the trouble that she's been presented with due to her husband passing. So now it's, well, we're here, my husbands are married, so maybe we just ought to stay. Have you ever went someplace temporarily and ended up staying? You used other circumstance, other experience in your life to justify your extended stay. Kind of like us. We go on a trip and we go, I just don't want to drive back home tonight. We stay in one more night. And then if we can, we'll stay one more night. If I go now, I may not ever come back. So we've got to be careful in what it is that we're doing in our season transfers, our turning seasons. You with me? Well, just hang on. I want to make sure you get a couple of points before I get wound up. Elimelech dies and the sons marry. It's amazing how sometimes we experience now I know why I went here. It's amazing to me how sometimes we experience the death of what brought us to a season, and instead of seeing the writing on the wall and moving into the next season, we use the excuses of other events to keep us in what was supposed to be temporary, and we've extended the time. God will move us. But when God moves us, we have to make sure that when that season's over, that we go to the next season. We think we need to stay. We find all the reasons in the world to stay. We stay in a bad relationship. We stay in an abusive relationship. This isn't me and her, so y'all chill. But we stay in an abusive relationship because he said, I'm sorry, I love you, I'll never do that again. Can I tell you women how foolish you are to hang out with some spineless punk man that's willing, yeah, I said it.
Yep, come on.
If that's all he can do is hit a woman.
Yep, come on.
But we will use I love you and I'm sorry to stay. Well, he told me that, he would never do it again. Like he said the last 30 times.
Yes. Yes.
But we find these events that hold us. And they keep us there. It's amazing to me how we can do that. Even though we're not happy where we are. Even though it's not stable where we are. Even though it doesn't make sense where we are, we find reasons to stay. I wonder how many of you have taken a season in your life and extended it when it was supposed to be temporary. Some of you may be staying at the extended stay right now. I ain't looking at you. I'm just looking. If I look back there, they get nervous. The sons die, and Naomi hears. How many of you know that sometimes we need drastic events to get our attention, to allow us to hear? See, don't always get bitter to God when a catastrophic event creeps in your life. Don't get mad at Him. Better yet, settle yourself and listen. Because what He has to tell you, He had to get your attention. Elijah had to be separated from everything and went into a cave. Well, I can't imagine sitting in a cave like Elijah talking to myself. Because you know it bounces off the walls? Man, it would have drove me absolutely crazy. It'd have been bouncing, and that's all I would have heard. Hey, I think maybe, well, if she would, and all of blah, 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 and I'm going, that would cause chaos in my mind. You hear this repetitive echoing of different conversations. I mean, he was done. He was over. He had already told God, kill me. Just kill me. And run off by himself. And it took God to bring all these catastrophic events to get his attention so that he would hear. Y'all remember? I mean, come on. This is Sunday school. I'll Sunday school you. There was great winds, earthquakes, fires, and God wasn't nowhere in it. And he went, I know. Down in the basement, doing your thing, you hear your wife, Aaron. And you go up, I know I heard her. And you go back downstairs, and Aaron. And you go back. And you go back downstairs. Aaron. And you go upstairs, and she's not there. And you go back downstairs. And then you go, Aaron. And you go, okay, wait a minute. Aaron. She's outside. She's out back. She ain't even upstairs. And you go out back, and there she is. If we will just settle down. And if we'll just listen. God's got a word that will get our attention. But we're too quick to respond sometimes. I'm not saying that responding quickly isn't the right thing to do. I'm just saying don't be noisy in the process. God will sometimes come full circle to complete his original plan in our lives. Look at what's going on. Naomi's pulled from Bethlehem. She's living in another world. And now God is calling her back by sending a word. Maybe it could have been the fact that he was trying to get her attention when her sons passed. Maybe he was trying to get her attention when her husband passed. But nonetheless, it took catastrophic events to get her to hear. She didn't move on what she saw. She didn't move on what she experienced. She moved at the sound. One day y'all figure that out. Anything that has power to create will come with a sound. And whatever is created out of the sound. Never mind. God said, I don't have time to walk you through the whole Bible. Taking us from one place to another and allowing us to experience life, watch this, and depths, not depths, depths of his ways. How many of you know we don't always understand God's ways? There are so many things and so many circumstances in our life that take place and we don't really understand it. We get mad at God. We fight God. We're determined. Men, women, y'all rebellious. We get to call ourselves determined. Right? We're determined to make it work. That's what we're supposed to do, right? We're determined to be the man of the home, to be the supplier, to be the provider. Come on, guys. Y'all so scared, man. You scared to death your wife go pinch you under the fat of your arm or something. Y'all know you all act like that. But with the women, we call them rebellious when they don't want to listen. Never mind. I wish I would lighten up just a little bit. Well, there was a point, I think, that I missed over on one side. Let me grab something. Hang on. Maybe it was there. Sorry. I just don't want to miss all this. I got 5 pages of good stuff, and I don't want to miss everything. She hears what's going on. And as soon as she heard that the place that they had left that was in famine, she wants to go back. Watch how God does this. Watch what's going on. We, right now, are thinking about Elimelech. How in the world could you leave Bethlehem and go over there? It's the house of bread. Well, don't you know that God would take care of you? This is for all you self-righteous Christians. I can't believe you're walking like that. Don't you know you're supposed to walk by faith, not by sight? I know, because you good and everybody else is bad. He's leaving. We get mad at him for taking his family. Look at what happened. And then we find that he dies, and some of you went, well, he deserved that. I know. Boy, y'all gonna figure this thing out. Y'all go figure this thing out. Then we look at his children. Well, they probably shouldn't have married the Moabites anyway. Well, it wasn't that marriage was prohibited. What it actually said in Deuteronomy was that if there was a child born a Moabite in an intermarriage, that in 10 generations, then they could become part of the congregation of Israel. It wasn't that marriage was prohibited. It was just that they couldn't be a part of the congregation. But see, some of us, we want to point fingers at them and go, well, you ain't supposed to be marrying outside anyway. Well, it ain't got nothing to do with that. But they marry and then they die. I mean, come on. Naomi's got to be beside herself right now. Everything, and I'm not saying that she didn't love her daughter-in-laws and that. She's got to be beside. Everything she's ever loved has been taken from her. First, her husband. Thank God she had 2 sons to provide for her. Then she loses 2 sons, and she's left with 2 women that were married to her sons. All of this thing. Man, I can imagine. Man, it must have been quiet on the front porch that day. When she heard that God had visited his people and brought them bread. That's just a bunch of chatter going on. Somebody was talking about something and she heard. Wait a minute. If God's provided, I've got to go.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, this is the way we think.
Yeah.
If God's provided, I've got to go where God is. Come on. Most of you don't visit God unless something. Some of us need our worlds in order for us to see God, in order for us to remember God. It's hard to remember when you're in the storm. You're focused on the storm. Yes, we are. You're focused on the storm. I mean, the 12 disciples, they are jumping on a boat to go to the other side just after Jesus had fed more than 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fishy. I wonder if they were brim. You don't think? You think they were like tuna? You don't. They were 2 fish. But the boy was carrying it, so I imagine he's probably a young lad. He might have been, I don't know. Never mind. These are just things I think about when I'm reading stuff like this. But they just got in a boat. They just had saw this miraculous thing take place, and they went, well, all we have, and Jesus said, well, that's more than enough. And they experienced it. Can you imagine? Y'all forgot the story. Jesus told them to set everybody down by 50s. 50 cents. 5. Grace. All right. He told them to set them down, and you feed them. Read the text. Jesus didn't hand it out. They did. Can you imagine? You just delivered the first basket to the first 50 people. You're already scratching your head. How in the world? And you drop that basket and you go, well, at least 50 people's going to get fed. And you go back and he gives you another basket. And you go, where did that come from? And you drop that and you come, and there's another basket. And then there's another. That's a lot of people. And then they took baskets. They seen this miraculous take place. And as soon as the storm went, freaking. It's hard to remember when you're in the storm. It took me back to Nehemiah right there. How he had to rebuild. And the Bible said that the first thing that he done, they had to dig through the rubble. See, sometimes your storm's going to leave you a mess. And you're going to begin to dig through the rubble. And God will remind you. It's going to take a minute. But you'll get through it. You can't quit now. There's no stopping now. I just see that's where she's at, man. She's looked at the remains of the storm. Whew. Oh, husband. Lost her baby boys, left with 2 women knowing where she was and the custom of that day for her, that a widowed woman can't work, can't provide, don't get the inheritance. I mean, come on, you got to follow me here. We got a long way to go. And that's what she's left with. And she heard that there was some bread. And she woke up. She got a hold to the girls and said, all right, I'm leaving. Have you ever gone through what many and even yourself would consider a catastrophe, only to look back and see that the plan of God was in the works all the while. Don't miss this. Don't miss this. We see in the end, and then we find resolve in ourselves that everything we have experienced and everything that we have gone through, though it was devastating at times. Anybody ever been through something devastating? It was worth it all to see God get the glory. See, it's here. It's right here that we begin to see and recognize that He thought that much of us to allow us to play a part in His plan. This is what I want you to understand this morning. We just looked at Elimelech, and we looked at Naomi, and we looked at the boys, and everybody's gone. Everybody's in disarray. Everybody's upside down. Everybody is broken and torn. And we want to blame Elimelech for leaving. Although he didn't hear God tell him to go. Just watch. God put something in his life to cause him to move. And he went to Moab to support his family and take care of Mama and the boys. And he gets there. And then he passes. And then the boys pass. It's not that they were in the wrong. It's not that they had broken laws. It's not. God allowed these things to happen again to move her full circle. God's plan was in action the whole time. Do you understand that Ruth is one of only 5 women that is spoke about when it comes to Jesus and his genealogy? One of 5 women. Look at what it took to get God's plan to work. Man, that's ruthless God, man. I can't believe he's just, if God don't allow things to happen in your life, you're never gonna move.
Amen. That's right.
You're stiff-necked. You're hard-headed. You want to sit. Man, some of you sitting in a lonely season right now. And it's not because that's where God wants you sitting. It's just that's all part of his plan right now. Because maybe what he needs you to do is experience something out of your norm so that you will run closer to him.
Amen.
So that you will have communion with the Father.
Yeah.
And see, he knew all along, if he left it up to you, you would make the excuses, or you would allow the excuses to be your indicator of all the reasons why you should stay where you are. The joy, off text, out of the word, the joy is about to be prevailed. Ain't got nothing to do with the sermon. The joy is about to prevail. Ain't got nothing to do with the sermon. Let's get back. God will let us just so that he could put his plan in place. And the whole time this was going on, God's plan was in action. The whole time, he already knew. He wasn't wringing his hands. He wasn't going, oh, shoot, I wasn't expecting him to catch a cold and pass away. He wasn't caught off guard. He already knew. But he already knew deep down that everything had to be laid out. Everything had to be purposed. And there had to be a woman by the name of Ruth. It just didn't happen. Y'all think he married her because it's God's plan. Look, I believe Ruth was hot. I'm sorry. Is that the wrong verbiage? Me and I call my wife hot. Sometimes smoking. Sometimes I'll leave it there. But he put Ruth in the way and caught one of the boys' attention. And that boy about broke his neck. He went a-chasing. And he hooked up because it was God's plan. How disturbing that she lost her husband. Man, I can't get too far into it. I can preach you from chapter 1 to chapter 4. I love Ruth. But I got to leave some of it. His whole purpose was to bring Ruth an example. An example of his kinsmanship. As an example of his salvation, his redemption. Listen, this is a Moabite woman moving herself, deciding to just stop everything in her life that she knew. But yet she had all this catastrophe, all of these letdowns, all of this hurt to destroy her. She could have been just like Orpah. I can't go any further. It's going to run over into the next week. I just love to talk to you about his redemption and the plan that he's got in. For me and you. Oh man, we're the framework of his hand. We're the framework of his hands. That means he's got boundaries around you. Would you please listen to me? There are things in your life that are supposed to happen just so that he can keep you within the boundary of his framework. Because he says, I know the plans. They're for good, not of evil, that'll prosper you and give you a hope. I'm framed. Framework it literally means boundaries. And that's where he put you. When he said Aaron, there was a boundary. And everything that happened inside of that boundary is working towards his plan. Yep, even your weed token. And your drinking. You don't want to hear it. He's framed it. Come on. See, okay, I'm going to help you. I'll pull some of you in here and coddle you for a minute. It's easy to love someone that loves you back. It's extremely hard to love someone that does not love you. He showed his love by dying even before you made a step. You thought he died for something else? He loved you. He died for you so that he could continue his work through you. How you gonna put a crown at his feet if you ain't been rewarded for something? He said, I know you was jacked up, but you came home. Good job. Here's a crown. Put that in your pocket. You'll need that for later. Ruth the whole time. Man, this was a setup to get Ruth, a Moabite woman, into the land of Bethlehem, Judah, praising him for the bread. Yeah, never mind. Judah means praise. Never mind. Gets her back there. I can't go. And she meets a man. I'm going to have to leave you there. I can't go in there. I got to wait. Because the pursuit has to happen now. First, you need to know that there's a plan. You might think that you have it laid out, but God's got it laid out. You might think you go in one direction, and God's got you on a sharp right. Actually, a left for you race car drivers. He done turned the wheel all the way to the left. And that's all you hear in your life. And another left turn. And another left turn. Because he's bringing you. Because he has a purpose in his plan that involved you. I'm trying to help somebody this morning. Don't be bitter on what you've experienced. Receive it as a plan. And give God thanks that he's seen you strong enough to go through it so that he could then take you and put you in the puzzle to complete it. He used you. He chose you to do this. He chose. He created you for your own cross. That's why he says, take up your own cross. You can't carry hers. Sweetheart, it'll break your back. But she can't carry yours. It'll break her back. Y'all better listen. It stopped. But I kept going. It was all in the plan. Listen to me. These are turning seasons in our life. You're not, if you think that you're going to walk a straight line with God, no. If you're walking a straight line with God, you better recalibrate your GPS. Because he got turns coming. This is why I like to follow him, because he got turns. I love bike. Never mind. We always turn. I've got to minister to everybody. We say we minister to the body, the soul, and the spirit. Remember, I got spanked for that. That's why that's there. I used to just want to minister to your spirit. I used to say God didn't care about how you feel. And I had to repent. He said, boy, wait a minute. You created to my image? Yes, sir. Am I a tri-being? Yes, sir. So are you. Body, soul, spirit. I expect you to minister to everyone. Yes, sir. That's why they do. That ain't up there just for decoration. It's to remind me. Because God does care how you feel. God does care whether you're in sickness or not. And God does care if you feel lonely or not. He does care. That's why he died for you. So that we could be complete in him. Wanting nothing. But his plan. His plan's beautiful. I mean, we've tore these people apart, man. Well, you shouldn't have moved, and you shouldn't have done it. And if you wouldn't have done this, then you wouldn't have. Well, if none of that would have took place, sweetheart, Ruth would have never made it to Bethlehem. That's right. And if Ruth wouldn't have come to Bethlehem, we couldn't have had a foreshadow of Christ becoming our Redeemer. He laid it all out, man. I look at the Old Testament like a coloring book. He just colored all the pieces in. And when he's done, we jump into the New Testament. We go, Look at that pretty picture. It's all in how you look at it. It's all in what you perceive. But this morning, I just want you to understand something, man. He's got a plan for your life. The great thing about it is your life becomes a piece of his plan. As bad as our life might look, and as much trouble as we feel like that we're going through, there's a pursuit that's required of us. And we're going to pick up on that next Sunday, so you better not miss it. Because this is when it really starts to get good. I just had to lay some groundwork, and I had to let you know that everything that happened was because of God's plan. This wasn't, come on. You think you're smart enough that your decision overrides his plan? What? Oh, you think you've got the decisions made. He's standing back going, girl, look, I'd already put that on the calendar back in 1 AD. And you think you all that in a bag of chips. Oh, I'm going to church on Sunday. He already knew. You ain't done him no favor. He said, you're going to be there this morning because you need to know that I thought of you enough. I love you enough to make you a part of the purpose of the kingdom. This is going to be a record breaker because I'm done. I can't give it all to you. We got pursuit to go through next week. Just bring your fried chicken. I forewarned them.
Don't be mad when I'm up here with mine.
If you don't share, hope you choke on a piece of gristle. But I'm done. I mean, it's the God, isn't God's plan beautiful? And how he just orchestrated. Man, I wonder if this is happening in heaven. I wonder. Let's see. Jesus is sitting on the throne. I'm trying to see if I'm scripturally sound. Is God sitting on the throne? Does it say that anywhere? Okay. Y'all research it. Give you something to do this week. I'm saying Jesus sits on the throne. But he says he's on the throne seated beside the Father. He doesn't say that it's the right. We don't know. God might be standing. But I just picture him like this. In front of the choir. And listen, I'm going to tell you this, I'm going to quit. Can you imagine how beautiful the sound is if he was to orchestrate, if he orchestrated your life with every turn, with every trial, with every tribulation, with every persecution, with every joy, with every challenge, with every stretching, joy. See, y'all think it's all that, right? Y'all think it's all supposed to be all that. Joy comes from within. I'm just giving you some, just at the end. But he's playing a beautiful song, and it's your life. Can you imagine what it sounds like in heaven? I mean, just this little group. Could you imagine the solo for this little group that he's up there playing, and he's playing all of our lives all at once to the beat of his own drum. But he's playing all, man alive, how beautiful of a sound your life makes in the presence of God. Don't give up. Don't be mad at yourself. Stop getting angry at God. Listen, because there's another turning season. And it's coming. It's coming. Some of you might be in a turn right now and don't know it. Some of you may recognize it, and you've already turned the wheel left. Some of you are anticipating it so much that you've turned it hard left, and you're on two wheels. And some of you may not know right now. Use this as a forerunner in your life that your turning season's coming. You will not arrive while you're here. So the turns aren't over. God's got a plan for you. He's got a plan. I'm done with you. Will you stand with me?